The sculpture is Michelangelo's Moses, completed around 1515, installed inside the church of San Pietro in Vincoli in Rome, and it has sat there for 5 centuries, attracting scholars, tourists, psychoanalysts, and pilgrims in roughly equal measure. Every one of them walks away with a different answer to the same question. What exactly is this man feeling? And what in the world do those horns mean? The answers are stranger than anything you would expect, because this sculpture was never supposed to be seen the way you are seeing it right now. Let's start with the placement problem, because it changes everything. Michelangelo did not design Moses to sit at eye level inside a church. The original commission was for the tomb of Pope Julius II, a structure so ambitious it was described at the time as a mountain of marble. The full plan called for a 3-tiered monument, freestanding, towering, with more than 40 individual statues arranged across its levels. Moses was meant to occupy the second tier, roughly 12 feet off the ground. Think about what that means practically. If you're standing below and craning your neck to look up at a figure 12 feet overhead, you are not seeing the front of that figure. You are seeing the underside of the chin, the foreshortened torso, the undersides of the arms, the proportions that look slightly exaggerated from straight on, the oversized shoulders, the swollen forearm veins, the elongated trunk. Those are not accidents. They are optical corrections, built into the marble the same way an architect builds a subtle curve into a bridge deck so that gravity makes it look flat. Michelangelo had used the exact same technique on the David in Florence. The head is too large, the hands are enormous. From the base of the building where it originally stood, looking up at an angle, it read as perfect. At eye level, Moses reads slightly wrong, and you cannot quite name why. But here is what changes most dramatically with the angle: the face. A German art historian writing in the early 20th century made the observation that the expression on Moses shifts entirely depending on your position. When you stand below and look up, the face does not register as rage, it registers as grief. Something closer to anguish than fury. The brow that reads as threatening from the front reads as burdened from below. The jaw that looks clenched reads as heavy with weight rather than tight with anger. Which means most of what has been written about this sculpture for the last 500 years describes something Michelangelo never intended anyone to see. Now, the horns. The standard explanation is a translation error, and it gets repeated so often, most people treat it as settled fact. In the original Hebrew text of Exodus, the word used to describe Moses' face after he came down from Mount Sinai is the verb karan, which comes from a root meaning a ray or beam of light. Moses' face was radiant. When the scholar Jerome translated the Hebrew scriptures into Latin in the late 4th century, he rendered that same word as cornuta, meaning horned. Every European artist who painted or sculpted Moses over the following 1,000 years followed Jerome's Latin text, producing a tradition of horned prophets across the whole of Western Christian art. That explanation is accurate as far as it goes. The problem is that it stops too early. Jerome was not a careless translator making a rookie mistake. He had studied Hebrew directly under Jewish scholars in the Holy Land. He was aware that karan could mean radiance. He used it that way in his own commentary on the book of Ezekiel. The man understood both options and chose horns deliberately, which means the question is not what Jerome got wrong. The question is what Jerome thought horns meant. Horns in the ancient Near East were not a symbol of the demonic. They were a marker of concentrated divine power. Kings wore horned crowns. Gods were depicted with horns. To bear horns was to carry within your body a force that exceeded human scale. There are Jewish liturgical poems written centuries before Michelangelo that describe God placing horns of glory on Moses so that he would be armed against the angels he passed on his descent from the mountain. In that reading, the horns are not a mistake. They are a sign of someone who has been in contact with something that permanently altered him. Michelangelo, who moved in the most sophisticated intellectual circles in Rome and Florence, almost certainly understood this tradition. He was not illustrating a blunder. He was working within a framework that had its own internal logic. But there is a third possibility, and it is the most extraordinary of all. A theory published in 2008 argued that at the sculpture's intended height, the two protrusions on Moses' head would have disappeared entirely from the sightline of anyone standing below. What you would have seen instead, looking up at those polished marble surfaces from a low angle, was light. Not the representation of light, not a metaphor. Actual light bouncing off the curved stone in a way that would have read to someone standing in a dim church interior, as radiance emanating from Moses' head. If that is correct, Michelangelo did not carve horns at all. He carved a light effect. He solved in solid stone what no artist before him had managed: how to make marble glow. The theory remains contested, but the ambiguity is the point. Either Michelangelo was working within a tradition where horns signified divine proximity, or he engineered a sculptural illusion that transformed stone into radiance, depending on your vantage point. Neither option is an accident. Then there is Freud. In September of 1913, Sigmund Freud traveled to Rome and spent 3 weeks visiting this sculpture almost daily. He sketched it, measured it, studied the position of every limb. He published his analysis the following year in a psychoanalytic journal anonymously, the only time in his career he concealed his authorship. He told colleagues he was too embarrassed to put his name to an essay about a statue. For centuries, scholars had read the pose as the moment just before catastrophe. Moses spots the Israelites worshipping the golden calf. He is about to stand up and smash the tablets in his hands. The pose is a coiled spring before release. Freud looked at the right hand and proposed something entirely different. The index finger is pressed into the beard at an unnatural angle, pulling strands of hair sideways across the face. Freud argued this position is a residue. Moses had already started to rise, the tablets had begun to slip, and then he stopped himself, sat back down, caught his own rage in the act of becoming action, and chose restraint instead. What the pose shows is not a man about to lose control. It is a man who just barely kept it. The foot still half planted, as if ready to push upward. The torso still tilted slightly forward, the hand still trembling in the beard. These are traces of a movement abandoned, not a movement building. Freud identified with Moses intensely during this period. He was writing the essay during his devastating break with Carl Jung, the colleague he had considered his intellectual heir, a leader who had chosen restraint, a prophet whose followers had turned away. But there is a fourth reading that arrives late in the scholarship, and it undoes almost everything that came before it. In 2003, 2 researchers pointed out something sitting in plain sight for 5 centuries. The tablets Moses holds are blank, no writing, no commandments. And in the biblical narrative, the only time Moses descended carrying blank tablets was the second time. The first set, shattered in fury during the golden calf incident, were inscribed by God. The second set were blank on receipt. The horns or rays appear on Moses' face only after the second descent, not the first. If those details are deliberate, the scene is not the golden calf moment at all. It is Exodus 33, Moses in direct encounter with the divine, his face still altered by that contact, carrying the fresh covenant back to the people who had just broken the original one. In that reading, the emotion on the face is not rage, not suppressed anger, not composure under pressure. It is something without a clean name. The residue of an encounter no human being is built to survive intact. The expression of someone who has looked at something and been permanently changed by the looking. Which brings you back to the room in Rome. The tomb Moses guards is empty. Julius II is not there. His remains were scattered during the sack of Rome in 1527 and now rest under a plain slab in St. Peter's Basilica. The monument was stripped back over decades of negotiation and broken promises from a 40-statue structure down to the single-room installation you see today. It marks the resting place of nobody. Moses has sat for 5 centuries in front of an absence, facing sideways at something outside the frame. Muscles locked, beard in his fist. Whatever lives on that face aimed at something no one else in the room can locate. He is 8 feet of marble and 5 centuries of unresolved argument, and he has not moved an inch.